Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast, where our money is not deferred.
Wow. Coming out swinging.
John, John here, once again, joined by the main man himself, Michael. How we doing?
Good, man. I am good. How are you? How are you, John?
Oh, I'm doing. It's the weekend. It's Christmas week. By the way, I feel like we need a whole week off, dude. I feel like one day off for Christmas is just not enough. We kind of because I feel like with all the traveling, you don't. Everyone's got like different parts of their family that they just no one all just meets up to have a big group gathering for Christmas.
Hmm.
So it's like I feel like you need like a week. Like we're gonna obviously celebrate Christmas on Monday, right?
Yes.
But like we're gonna celebrate Christmas at the tailgate tomorrow. You're probably going somewhere today for Christmas, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot of yes. Yes. It's very hard to get check everybody's boxes on the big day.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
dude.
what the leagues do is they throw a lot of sports on to make you not want to leave the house. So there's that. Um, the whole ratings debate on stuff always, NFL will always be king just because it is the sport. There's nothing any other sports league can do to compete with the numbers. But it is funny. You get two stinkers, two bad NFL games on Christmas Day, two blowouts that were never really close. Um, didn't have a ton of exciting stuff going on, and you combat that with there's obviously the 5 NBA Christmas games, 4 of which were, like, incredible, and the 5th one was still, like, a fairly good game, um, that was decently close the entire time, but the first 4 of the day were very, very good and all came down to the very end. So, NBA definitely did well for themselves on Christmas, this year, which has definitely been better than some previous Christmases.
I think it's a good time for you to bring up you were watching the Sixers highlights and you were raging about how the league maybe like since you brought up ratings and how the Christmas was very beneficial to the NBA. Basically like how they glazed the Celtics despite the fact
Yeah.
that they lost the game.
So there's obviously a league-wide anti-Sixers agenda. That's nothing new. Um, anti-Embiid, whether it's still going after the Sixers for tanking, whatever it may be, anti-Philadelphia. That's always
I feel like
common
it's
in all
really been
sports.
like almost 10 years since they tanked. So this idea that they need to be continually like
They still
punished.
do it, like, because they were the first team to openly like admit to it. The league, like, will forever hold it against they're the only team that forced out a GM and forced another GM in here. The only team that had to deal with that, despite plenty of other teams tanking. How many mock posts did I need to see of Zion in a Knicks jersey when he was coming out of Duke or anything else? Who's winning the Wemby sweepstakes as if all those teams aren't tanking to go get him? The Pistons and the Spurs and whatnot. So whether it's that, whether it's they don't like Embiid, whatever it is, okay. So I'm watching the Sixers highlights. We were at Christmas dinner, unable to watch pretty much all the Sixers game in the afternoon, and I wanted to see how the game went. I saw some highlights on Twitter, like a few plays here and there, some really nice defensive plays by Maxey on Tatum, some nice hustle plays by Embiid on the offensive glass, leading to second chance points. Just a bunch of good Sixers stuff. I wanted to watch the highlights. I wanted to see it all in one cohesive sequence. I am so serious. It was about a 12-minute highlight video of the official NBA YouTube account. If you covered the score and, like, turned off the announcers so they weren't saying the score, you would have thought the Celtics won by, like, 8 points. Like, you would have thought the Celtics won and kept the Sixers at arm's length the entire time. Because the amount of times that the Sixers score would just go up on the bottom, but then it would be a Celtics make, then the Sixers score goes up, they don't show it, and then it's another Celtics make, and I was like, well, what are we doing here? Embiid had 27 points on Christmas. I think you saw probably about 8 or 9 points. Jason Tatum had 32 points. I think you saw about 25 of them in the highlight video. You you saw like three of Caleb Martin's threes that he had seven of, and it feels like, when someone has seven threes, you want to show all of them, that sort of thing. It was just, I don't know. I felt like I was kind of losing my mind. I feel like I didn't see very many Yabusele plays, even though Twitter was raving about how great he was playing defensively. They showed the in between quarter interview of Tyrese Maxey talking about how important it is to play, individual defense against this Celtics team because they love to drive and kick. But then they don't show his great stop in the fourth quarter when the Sixers are up five on Tatum, where he tries to drive, tries to push off. Tatum, Maxey's all on his face, all on his grill. Then he drives, shoots an off-balance shot, and Embiid help defense blocks it, leading to an Al Horford missed three. They don't show any of that, and like I felt like I was going crazy, and it was like all of a sudden it was like, oh, the Sixers won, and it just watching those videos, it didn't feel like the Sixers are winning. And I know it's just one highlight video or whatever, but I don't know, man. Like you talk about how you want to portray your product or whatever, and it's like that portrayal, you'd be shocked watching all the highlights thinking, man, how are the Celtics losing? I feel like all I'm seeing is them scoring, which is true. That was the majority of the video. Regardless, I was very, very frustrated when I watched that the day after Christmas. And I just wanted, all I wanted to do was catch up on, uh, see how the game went. And then that is how the game went. And I feel like I was losing my mind.
Yeah, I'd be like if you were a Bills fan watching them beat the Chiefs and they just showed every good Mahomes play and they just never
Right.
showed.
Like it's like,
It's
it's
really
so,
baffling, and it's also why I think I don't know. There's this whole massive debate like why are NBA ratings going down? Everyone brings up all these different points, and I'm like I don't know, maybe because no one likes the Celtics, and yet they're just foisting them down everyone's throats.
hmm yeah.
I think the knowledgeable fans are they kind of know that Tatum is not a top three player, and yet they're like treating him. They trying to make him like he's Larry Bird or like Paul Pierce,
hmm
but he's not.
hmm No, like he's not, yeah, like he's very, very good, but there's like another tier that he doesn't enter because of whatever multitude of reasons, and it's fine for them. They win with that because they have so many other really great guys. It doesn't You don't need to have a top three player on that team to be dominant like they are. But Jesus, it was just really, really frustrating. But quietly, the Sixers have won 8 of their last 11. They're now tied in the loss column in the 8th seed. They're like a half a game back of the 10. They're like 2 games back of the 8. I think it's only like 4 games back of the 6. Like they've righted the ship a bit to get to a point where they have a 5-game road trip coming up, all against inferior teams. Their next 8 games total are against pretty inferior teams. Obviously, not saying they're going to rip off 8 in a row, but like it's not impossible. It's definitely not, and it would be something that if in the next 5 games you win like 4 out of 5, and the next 8 you win like 6 out of 8, all of a sudden you're definitely back in the thick of it. And like, listen, it helps that the Eastern Conference is very, very weak, but you're seeing it now with Embiid, George, and Maxey all playing together. Even though Paul George has struggled mightily offensively, he is just such a just he's just better at basketball. Like I'm seeing a lot of the Tobias thing, like showing Tobias stats, like, oh, we just got another Tobias. We just got. It's like you tell me when the last time you could rely on Tobias the way he was playing, the way Paul George was playing defensively on Christmas against the Celtics wings. You tell me the last time Tobias had 8 assists in a game or 10 rebounds, let alone he had 10 rebounds and 8 assists. Paul George did. So yes, Paul George isn't scoring the way we'd like him to be. He needs to be a more consistent 3-point shooter in the grand scheme of things. But he does a lot of other things basketball wise that are significantly better than what Tobias Harris was doing.
Well, yeah,
That
he's definitely a better player than
he's
Tobias
just a
Harris.
better basketball player. They get just strictly that. And it's like when that core group, when your guys are healthy, the ideal starting 5 that you had in mind before the season started, the Sixers are really, really, really good defensively. Maxi's made it a point to improve himself defensively. He said that. He goes, "I didn't like being picked on as a liability. I wanted to make myself a better defender." That he has. He's become a much better defender. Paul George has kinda always been a good defender. Joel Embiid is really taking it upon himself to be a serious perimeter, interior threat like he always is. And your wings between Yabusele, you know, and Kelly Oubre and Caleb Martin, those are just all like solid sized, good defending pieces that you're going to be a good defensive team. It's not having Jared McCain is really going to suck because he really filled holes that this team had unexpectedly. Like this team has shooting holes and they have playmaking holes, and he fit that so, so well. So I do think the Sixers are going to be in the market for a guy to kind of replace that for at least this year. I'm seeing the name thrown out. Keon Ellis, like that's like a more defensive minded version of what Jared McCain brought. I'm also seeing Shake get some toss around as he's been playing well this season for Brooklyn. They're gonna add, I think, some sort of guard, to kind of fulfill that role, and, obviously, health is the biggest thing, but if, you do manage to be healthy when it matters, I do think this team it's very, very good, and it's a very good iteration of what the Sixers have been trying to be, and the defensive improvements and getting a player like Yabusele as good as he's been, it's a huge reason as to why they're potential is certainly maybe higher than it's been, in recent years.
So yeah, we'll just keep monitoring the Sixers. I mean, I think they're
Mhm,
probably going to improve. And yeah, the McCain injury just blows because with the improvement, it's like he'd be obviously a really good, like, at minimum a role player. Like, for just we need volume scoring. Like we see him
mhm,
when he's take when he's allowed to take a lot of shots. He could definitely bury it,
mhm,
especially from three. Moving on with quick hitters as we're just kind of going through quickly. You brought up Corbin Burns
mhm,
before the show, and yeah, that's obviously the big one of the big pieces to fall in free agency. Surprisingly, signed with the Arizona Diamondbacks because he was heavily linked to the San Francisco Giants and the Toronto Blue Jays, and instead he's going to Arizona, and barring like the Los Angeles Dodgers roster all getting injured at once,
mhm,
they're going to win the NL West again.
mhm.
But the Diamondbacks, um, Michael, especially with these news of the Padres possibly looking to shed payroll, they could be a strong candidate to be the second place team in the NL West and potentially compete with the Phillies for a wild card spot in the National League. So, what are your thoughts on that signing?
I think it's a great signing, for Arizona. I think, Corbin Burns was definitely the best pitcher on the market. Um, he's been one of the better pitchers in baseball, the last 4 years, obviously does have a Cy Young under his belt. Was very, very effective for the Orioles last year. A big reason that they had such a successful regular season. But the Diamondbacks, you look at, their holes last year. Obviously, Corbin Carroll wasn't that good. Ketel Marte got hurt in a bad timing. And, you know, they signed Jordan Montgomery expecting to get something of what the Rangers got the year they won the World Series. And instead, they got one of the worst pitchers in baseball who was very disgruntled at his agent. So this absolutely bolsters their rotation. They still have Zach Gallen, they still have Merrill Kelly, they still have Brandon Pfaadt, and what's his name is getting back from injury fully this year, right? Eduardo Rodriguez. So their rotation is pretty set. It's definitely one of the quieter. best rotations in baseball. You know, a little allude to the Phillies, as I do think the Phillies still have the best rotation in baseball, but um, the Diamondbacks one's definitely up there, especially in the National League. And what's good for them is that of all those guys in their rotation, they're all pretty durable. They're all guys that known to be healthy, even though they've been dealing with some injury stuff as of late, and that's huge. If you have, having 3 durable starters now isn't massively important. To have 4 or 5, that's, such a luxury. And yeah, the Diamondbacks, their pitching staff is definitely, whether it's building for the Dodgers or the National League as a whole, it's definitely, it's definitely improved. Whether they're trying to model themselves after the Phillies with having a dominant pitching rotation to, you know, build a team for October. It's kind of what the Phillies' MO was their first 2 playoff runs that made it pretty deep, was that their team was not built for the regular season, it was built for the playoffs. And so maybe the Diamondbacks trying to follow that mold, but definitely they got the blue chip starting pitcher on the market. Um, what is it, 6 years, 210 million? Nice, pretty price tag,
Yeah, and
but
like I do
he's
think
worth
it's
it.
what I find interesting about this is I feel like the
Yeah.
Diamondbacks every 5 years just go out and sign like the biggest name pitcher, but pretty much ever since like Randy Johnson and like Brandon Webb, when like and Kurt
Mhm.
Schilling, I feel like whenever the Diamondbacks go out to acquire a big name pitcher, it's like they just suck. Like I think the most infamous is definitely Madison Bumgarner.
Mhm.
He was
Mhm.
just cooked. I
Yeah,
don't
he
think
was
Corbin.
washed.
I don't think Corbin Burns is nowhere near cooked, Michael. In my opinion,
Mhm.
I think he's just hitting his prime. So I mean, obviously, he's now their best pitcher.
Yeah.
No disrespect to to Zach Gallen, local guy, but I think Zach. This is kind of like if the Phillies added when the Phillies signed Zach Wheeler, but if Zach Wheeler was like the Zach Wheeler we
It
know
was
now.
like signing Zach Wheeler after, like, the Phillies went to the World Series. Like,
Yeah,
would have been signing him there for the first time.
and I think it's good because for Diamondbacks fans, because they went to the World Series as an underdog. Following year, they didn't really do
They didn't
much
make the
other than
playoffs.
sign Jordan Montgomery, and you know now you added Corbin Burns. They have probably one of the best prospects in baseball coming up in Jordan Lawler. Not probably, he is one of the best prospects in baseball. He's coming up. He's going to be
Mhm.
on their team this year as well. Like they're definitely a team that's gonna. They just keep adding. Like I know
Yeah.
they lost Christian Walker, but I'd rather have. I think that's a great trade off having Corbin Burns over Christian Walker.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then you replace him with Josh Naylor, who is far
Yes,
from a bad player.
and I
Like,
felt like they didn't give up a whole lot to get Josh Naylor.
no, classic Guardians being, like, sort of unserious. But yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Next
So
move, so I alluded to it, and the Philadelphia Phillies made a trade the other
Joe
day.
Ross. No, I'm just kidding.
Joe Ross, listen, I like the Joe Ross move too. It's a very effective swingman, I think. But regardless, that's not what we're here to talk. We're here to talk about Jesus Luzardo from the Miami Marlins, formerly of the Oakland A's as well. Um, they traded Starlin Caba, and I'm blanking on the other prospect at the very moment. But it wasn't nobody, but it wasn't one of the topper, higher acclaimed prospects.
I'm going
But
on MarlinsManiac.com on
wow,
this trade.
Marlins maniac. What it would be to be a diehard Marlins fan does not sound inviting, I have to say. Um, but I love the Jesus Luzardo trade. I'm a huge fan of it, actually. I trust the Phillies that they made sure that his injury issues are not serious enough to want to deter them from having a guy like Luzardo for the next 2 seasons. I think that he is going to be He's gonna fit right in. Like I trust
Paul
Caleb.
McIntosh. They call the
Paul,
Phillies. So the trade is Jesus Luzardo and minor league catcher Paul McIntosh for Starlin Caba and outfield prospect Amarian Boyd.
Marion Boyd. That's right. So yeah, I think Luzardo. I think it's a very very good move for the Phillies. Had a great 2023. You know, a huge reason as to why the Marlins made the playoffs in 2023. And then was injured for most of last year. You know, he suffered an injury earlier in the season and was never fully able to kind of, maintain. So I trust the Phillies did their homework with his health pretty comfortably. And I trust Caleb Cotham to kind of right any wrongs that he may have and fully get him to where, his potential puts him. I think that he's shown as a pitching coach to be able to kind of get anybody maximized for the most part, and I think Zarda will be no different. His peripherals always look nice. It's always trying to match the great peripherals with the great result stats, and I think that's something he's excelled at. And you look at the Phillies rotation, and it's I think easily the best rotation in baseball. Wheeler, Nola, Ranger, Sanchez, and now Luzardo. Jesus Luzardo has the stuff of a guy that can be a number 2 starter in a rotation, and the Phillies are having him as, like, their 4, 5, their 5, basically. It's really luxury, luxury, luxury as much as you wanna talk about it, and it provides a lot of flexibility for everybody. A big conversation last year was about the number 5 starter. They need a number 5 starter. They need a number 5 starter. And I was of the camp that like it's not that important. You don't even use 5 in the playoffs. You only use 4 in the playoffs, let alone needing 5. Like all that sort of stuff. And where those people that were complaining about the 5th starter are correct is that the Phillies were like outlier level bad when the 5th starter took the mound. It was something of the effect of just it was terrible, whether it was Taijuan Walker, whether it was Tyler Gilbert, whether it was Tyler Phillips, whether it was Michael Mercado, whoever the 5th starter was, whether it was Colby Allard, it was just bad. It was bad pitching, and you were likely going to lose every time, and that's just something that's not common. You don't almost always lose those games, and the Phillies were almost always losing every single one of those games. So you had about 130 out of 162 games last year started by your, like, core 4 of Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez, and Suarez. That number is gonna get another, you know, 20 or so to, like, 150 out of 162, which is a huge difference, and then what this also does, talk about flexibility, it opens you up to when Andrew Painter gets brought up in about July, which is the Phillies' assumption, to have a six-man rotation for that part. And running a six-man rotation, not only does that help your starters, obviously, it helps your bullpen a lot because it wasn't just the fact that they were losing these fifth starter games or whoever it was. It was the fact that they had to empty the bullpen every single time. Like it was you were getting such luxury from your other four starters being able to pitch so deep into games, but then every time the number 5 rolled around, it was all hands on deck every single time. You're digging through the pen. God forbid you got a bad start from Nola or Ranger, Sanchez or Wheeler that you had to dip into the pen earlier in a series. That by the time that fifth guy rolls around, you're laying it all out there. So having a guy like Luzardo and then Painter when he eventually comes up, you got six very capable starters that is going to help limit everyone's innings, limit the starters' innings themselves, limit the bullpen's innings to prevent hopefully another utter collapse like they had in this year's playoffs. Um, preventing people them from just being gassed out, whatever it may be. It's really really going to help, and it opens up in the playoffs, moving one or two of those guys. It'll probably be Ranger because he's just the most comfortable doing it to the bullpen in the playoffs, and having such a weapon, one of your starters coming out of the bullpen to be super dominant. And if you can go in a playoff series with like Wheeler game 1, Sanchez game 2 because his home splits or whatever, Nola game 3, Luzardo game 4, and, oh, by the way, Ranger Suarez can pitch in, like, 3 of those 4 games as well out of the bullpen. All of a sudden, come playoff time, you're not gonna have a
Well,
ton
I
of
think
issues with pitching.
I think their caution with obviously with Andy Painter. At first I was like, it kind of blows, and now I thought about it, and besides Paul Skeens, Michael, who we know is like a cyborg, he's a 101.
Right.
Like, unfortunately, like Andy Painter is just not Paul Skeens. So you look at some of the other like top pitching prospects who pitched this year in Major League Baseball, and there was like mixed results. It's just fun. You're a rookie. You're figuring out the big leagues, right? But I
Mhm,
feel like it's harder when obviously it's way harder when you're a rookie starting pitcher
mhm,
versus like a positional player because it's you're playing every day versus playing once a week, right? I do think it's going to be good. I think they want to ease Andy Painter in because I don't think they want to call him up after coming off a very serious arm injury. And then, like, what if he gets roughed up a bit? You don't want to, like, he seems like he's a very calm, cool, confident guy.
mhm,
But, you don't want to, like, ruin your second, arguably, maybe your best prospect. It's probably debatable between him and Aiden Miller right now, right? But I
mhm.
mean, we'll see it, but I agree with you. It gives the Phillies a lot of depth. However, I think it might also. I do think Taiwan Walker is. They're going to employ maybe a 6 man from the start, but Taiwan's going to be that sixth guy because you're stuck with them for the next 2 years still, Michael. And like, unfortunately, they, if you're going to buy out Taiwan, like, you're almost better off in spring training, seeing how he shows up, see what he's done to improve because he was so bad last year. Like, I hate, I
I hear what you're saying, like, it
I
just
get there's sunk cost fallacy. That there's a concept. It's called sunk cost fallacy,
mhm,
where it's like you make a bad investment and you keep doubling down in the investment
and it's like, "Oh,
because
we've invested this much, we might as well." So, I hear you. I don't know, like, it'll be interesting because you 'cause you're gonna be thinking about roster spots and, like, bullpen spots versus whatever. They might just cut him. I don't know what the financially smart time to cut him would be, but if obviously they won't it'll probably be very difficult to trade him, but if he's gonna be on the roster, like, I don't know, maybe they do run a six-man out of the gate, ease Luzardo's innings or something like that, but it'd be really interesting to see how they navigate that roster spot with Taiwan.
by the
We'll
way,
have to wait and see.
I have Jesus Luzardo's baseball savant pulled up.
Mhm.
So I will say this about this move. Just looking at a lot of his advanced metrics,
His
um,
2023 is very, very good.
right. He is particularly his fastball, and he primarily uses his four seam. He does throw a sinker. I would imagine the Phillies are probably going to teach him a cutter in spring training because that's what they kind of do with all their pitchers. And I think they just kind of want to work on his breaking ball. Really isn't ultra like effective. It's very
I think they're gonna try to make him like right-handed Wheeler, like or left-handed Wheeler, sorry, where like, Wheeler's got his fastball, Wheeler's got his sinker, um, and Wheeler's got his slider.
so from what I've been reading too, though, like you brought up, obviously his health is a concern. Apparently, the Marlins had a trade worked out with the Cubs to send Luzardo to the Cubs, and then they would send back prospects, and it fell through because the Cubs saw his medicals and they didn't want to fork over.
I trust the Phillies, with the health thing. They've kind of, again, knock on wood, they've kind of
I'm sure Zach Wheeler's medicals didn't look all that
that's what
spectacular
I
when
was
they
gonna say,
signed him
like, they've kind of nailed the medical guesses, if you will. Not that they're guesses, but you know what I'm saying. Like, Zach Wheeler was far from a clean bill of health when he hit free agency, and the Phillies trusted what they believed in his pitching stuff, and obviously, he's been the best pitcher in baseball since he's gotten here. So yeah, I do trust that they I do trust the Phillies medical staff. I think a little bit more than I trust whatever the hell the Cubs do up there, as they are
So
not a serious
Luzardo. So
organization.
I have his pitching repertoire: four seam fastball, slider, changeup, sinker, and he uh, has a curveball that he's thrown
It's
that
literally
he
Zach
threw last
Wheeler.
year 2 times.
It's literally Zach Wheeler. Zach barely throws his curveball. Throws everything
So
else though. So yeah, I think they view him as a left-handed wheeler and are going to be very excited to be getting his hands on him for sure. But yeah, Phillies, I like the rotation. Um, you know, I guess that's enough baseball for now.
uh,
So
yeah,
let's move to football. So obviously we had three stinkers in a row, really. Two really bad Christmas games. Baltimore dominance of Houston. Bobby Slowick's offense looks atrocious. There are receivers running routes right in the same spot. The offensive line's terrible, and CJ Stroud is playing far from what he was playing like last year. Far from it. All that combines, they're still going to win the division, and they're going to host the playoff game. We'll see how far they go. You know, the Texans' defense has been what has been carrying them to this point. Them and Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon has been kind of uh,
Joe Mix,
stymied a bit
Joe
recently.
Mixon's, if you're, I'm in the
I was
fantasy
just about to
space,
say, you fantasy
Mixon
playoff owners have been very disgruntled at Joe Mixon for being great all year, and really the last 5 weeks has been
mid.
relatively underwhelming. So yeah, you combine all that, and you have a team that maybe they can win a playoff game off the back of their defense, depending on who they play, especially if it ends up being a team like the Steelers or something. Uh, but they will not beat a serious AFC contender because their offense is just so out of whack, and they really should fire Bobby Slowick as soon as they should. You couldn't convince me that doing it now would be a bad idea. So they
I
should
mean,
do
I
it
feel like when your
as soon as
offense is that
possible.
disjointed, I don't think it's just the offensive coordinator. I think it might be the whole offensive staff, besides the running backs coach. You know,
Mm.
just because like you just said, dude, the route combos are bad. Isn't Slowick a Shanahan guy?
Uh, is he a Shanahan guy? Bobby Slowick. He was in that. He was a defensive assistant back in that Washington room that had McDaniel, Shanahan, Lafleur, that had all of them. But yes, he is a Shanahan guy. Niners passing game
Yeah, I'm
coordinator.
starting to feel like these Shanahan guys, Michael, are like,
It's like
with
the
the
Fangio
exception.
guys.
Well,
Eh,
yeah,
not that bad. Not that bad.
like the
But
McVay. I think like I'd rather have the McVay guys than the Shanahan guys.
I mean, is McVay not a Shanahan guy?
I mean, yeah, it's a kind of a good point, but I also feel like I don't know, dude. I feel like McVay's offenses are like kind of rooted more in scheme, where like it does you could just interchange guys and it works.
Mhm, mhm,
Where like Shanahan's scheme is highly dependent on like the skills of the players in order to function. If they don't have it, it's like he can't adjust.
mhm,
You
mhm,
know, that's and it's more run based. You know, but that's the thing, which is right run based, right? Like Joe Mixon's having a big season, like that's great and all, but like this is a passing league, and
mhm,
like we said it with the Eagles the last few weeks, last couple podcasts, like the offense, the passing game needs to like get better, based essentially, right?
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. no surprise the Ravens smoked them. Michael, I will say this: the Baltimore Ravens, ever since the Eagles loss, they've been on a bit of a tear. I would say.
Yeah, I I I felt it going into it, looking at their schedule, that that Eagles game to them was just not that they weren't trying or whatever, or anything like that, but in terms of importance level on their schedule, it definitely felt like the game that they were very content to lose, you know? They were just coming off and, like, they had a two-week stretch where they won that crazy game against the Chargers, but the week before they had lost to the Steelers. They had that Eagle game in a spot where they were 1, they had the bye week the following week, and they had out of the bye at Giants, home Steelers, at Texans on Christmas, home Browns. Much more teams that are, like, important to beat, like, teams you should beat, teams you're much better than, and then AFC contenders, division contenders, where it's like losing to one of the best teams in the NFC is not the end of the world as long as you're taking care of the games that matter more. AFC contenders, divisional opponents, weak teams in the NFL that you should just beat anyways. Like, that's how I kind of viewed it was going, and, they came out of the bye, dominated the Giants, dominated the Steelers, and they dominated the Texans, and now they play the hapless Browns, the final week of the season. So, the Ravens, they took care of the business they needed to take care of to kinda be in a spot to feel comfortable about the division, and, we'll see how it carries them in the playoffs if they can finally end some of their playoff demons, but, yeah, they've been
Yeah,
playing very, very good football.
speaking of the Steelers, wow, man,
The fall off is legit.
yeah,
I see a lot of people saying, a lot of Steelers fans that are frustrated with Mike Tomlin generally, and are like, "This is classic Tomlin, coach great all year, end of the season, let everything fall off." I'm not really sure what the issue is. I think not having George Pickens for a few weeks was very bad, and now that you got him back, he didn't play his best game against Kansas City, stopped running routes a few times. The defense has become significantly more penetrable. Honestly, since the Eagles game, like, the Eagles couldn't run anywhere on the Steelers, but they were throwing it all over them, and then, you know, since then, the Steelers have been getting ran all over, so, I don't know, Derrick Henry ran all over them. Chiefs just kinda dominated them. They're showing that, they're not up to snuff with the class of the NFL, AFC or NFC. They're gonna be a frisky out if you catch them on a good day, but it feels like the book is out on how to beat the Steelers, and the offense is showing its limitations. They could really you talk about needing certain things, like, they could really use an elite running back. They got 2 solid-ish ones, but for a team that's predicated themselves in the passing game as touchdown or check down, big play or we're throwing it underneath, and then we're just gonna run the ball. To not have a running back that can really take over a game, like, at all, you have 2 split backfield guys that are good at their own thing, but they're not even great at their own thing. You lack an ability to really, really take over, not like, oh, if they had Derrick Henry, but it's like, you look at if they had a guy like Derrick Henry or a guy like Saquon where, you know, eh, you're not gonna be a great throwing team, that, but instead of giving the ball to Najee Harris 14 times and Jalen Warren 7 times, you're giving it to one of those 2 elite players, like, 18 to 24 times, and maybe the big play comes from the running game where they break one. Like, I'm sorry, but Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, neither of which are gonna break, like, some 50-plus yard run very often, and, elite running backs tend to have that breakaway sort of stuff pretty often, and it limits your big play ability when the only way you can do it is deep passes, and that's kinda it. You can't even you're not gonna do it really well in the screen game. You don't have a ton of weapons that are able to make a bunch of people miss and go get a big play like Jamar Chase, and you don't have running backs that can break off big runs. So when your big play is legitimately only downfield, deep downfield passing, what you have good guys for it, it just it becomes predictable. Their offense is very,
I
very
mean, the Steelers are
predictable.
ready to trade like a first and multiple other picks to acquire Brandon Ayuk. So the Steelers obviously know they need to
They
improve
know. They
at
know.
the skill positions, and they didn't want to trade Pickens in any of these hypothetical wide receiver trades. Like, yeah, they're gonna probably go push for hard to sign T. Higgins in the offseason, and
Mhm,
obviously they want to upgrade at corner because Joey Porter Jr. is having a sophomore slump this year,
mhm.
leading all corners in penalties, and he's kind of a whiny baby, you
Listen, they
know.
wouldn't mind improving the quarterback either. Like, Russ has been nice, but, like, again, it's limited, you know? There's a the
Yeah,
Steelers
but
have a lot
I
of
agree,
things.
but at the same time, like who would be out there at quarterback for them to just to go pick up besides like at this point, like if they brought in Darnold, is he gonna I mean,
He's not elevating an offense. See, the thing is that the Steelers don't have holes per se that are that big, but their holes are covered with Band-Aids. Like, it's they're covered, but they're not super reinforced, and this is kinda what you get, where you get bullied around by the good teams,
yeah,
and
like here's the crazy thing. You mentioned like how like mid Najee Harris is, right?
mhm,
So like Aaron Jones, who was basically injured for most of 2023 when he was on the Packers, he's
mhm,
30 years old, Michael.
mhm.
He's had 1,000 yard season as well. 1,046 yards, in fact, 5 touchdowns.
Aaron
We mentioned
Jones has been a
before how
huge weapon for the Vikings this year, both in the
right.
receiving game and the running
He's
game.
30 years old. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry. What do you think Najee Harris's yards per carry is?
Gotta be in the threes, right, John?
It's 4.
4 flat. It's not
Yeah. So
terrible.
like,
Again, it's not
so this is
terrible,
well, Michael.
but
Like back in the day, like when like I would like go through like the newspaper to look at NFL stats. Like if you're a running back and you get over 200 carries, I'm sorry, you should be expected to get 1,000 yards.
mhm. Yeah, no, listen, you should be damn close to it, and,
So
you
that's
know, with
not
the Steelers
impressive. It's like,
run,
oh, like they're like a lot of fans like, oh, Najee since 2021 is at 1,000 yards every year. Yeah, because you hand the ball off to him 25 times a
it's a
game.
very inefficient 1,000,
He
and
also
now you're
cost you the
seeing
Eagle game when he fumbled
yeah.
for like
No,
an
yeah, the Steelers have issues, and that takes us to Thursday, which, geez, you know, I've seen
certainly a winnable game for the Bears.
as they kinda all have been, you know, the Bears once upon a time were 4 and 2, and now they are 4 and 12. Um, wow. You know, obviously, it all started with the Hail Mary, and then it just nosedived even further than even imaginable, and the Bears are just so broken, like, they need the season to end as soon as possible. It's not even funny how much they need the season to just be over with. Um, they need a complete overhaul of the offensive line and a complete overhaul of the coaching staff, you know? They you watch their games, and you're watching Caleb Williams. He makes a few plays every game that is like, "Damn, like, that's the guy," you know? "Look at that arm talent. That's a ridiculous play. Not many guys can do that," all that sort of stuff. And then you watch him take a lot of sacks. You watch him try to make a guy miss, and he doesn't effectively make him miss. It was that whole, you know, "Oh, that stuff won't work at the pro level," and it's like, it's been coming true, you know, trying to just make everybody miss. He'll learn how to make NFL defenders miss. It's obviously not gonna be the same effectiveness that he had in college, but he'll get there. Their offensive line, though, is really terrible. Like, it's just constant pressure, it's constant missed blitz pickups, it's constant everything, and they run, like, no joke, it feels like 12 screens a game that for every one that goes more than, like, 5 yards and is, like, decent, 6 of them are, like, 3 yards or less, and it's just it's so it's a very frustrating team to watch, and in a game that was so winnable where the Seahawks offense has been stuck in the mud for a few weeks now, the Bears couldn't muster one drive. And then I think what was most frustrating is, like, it's the decision making again, and I get it, this guy was an interim OC to then become interim head coach. It really was a
Michael, he was the OC on the Panthers when like bad Bryce Young was a
yeah,
thing.
it was a total it
This
was a
guy
very
clearly is not qualified to be in the position he's in.
not to be a head coach, no, and it was a very escalated level of it was escalated levels of responsibility that happened very quickly. He went from, so 4th and 1, they line up. Seems like they might not even go for it when they kinda need to, and then they jump and they get a false start. Send out the punt team, then they call timeout, then they send back out the offense, miracle conversion, and it was like, you wasted what the hell was that? Like, you wasted a timeout, okay. Then you get another 4th down, another big conversion, and then you get into field goal range, but you're not in field goal range because Cairo Santos can't make a long field goal, and they have not tried all year to bring in a new kicker that can maybe make a long field goal. So 57 yards, I know it's no chip shot, but your kicker should be able to make a 57-yard field goal in the year 2024. Like at this point, they should be able to make those kicks. You can't just have kickers that are incapable of doing it, that you need to get to like 52 yards to feel confident that your kicker maybe has a chance to make it. Okay, regardless. So you're in about a 57-yard field goal range on 1st down, and the clock is running, and you don't take a timeout, and instead you had about 50 or so seconds go off, and then they run a play, they throw it out of bounds, and there's about 30 seconds, and you're like, Jesus, what was the point? You might as well just spiked it and save the time. Okay. So you have 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down. Not once did they try anything underneath. They ran 3 deep ball plays trying to, I don't know what, get into touchdown range, try to score a touchdown, whatever. You had 3 plays to get yourself into a manageable field goal, and they threw 3 incompletions, and then on 4th down, finally, they send the house, doesn't get picked up. Williams throws up a prayer, and it gets intercepted. And it's just perfect disaster and comedy of errors on all fronts of the Bears organization, top to bottom, really encapsulated in one final drive attempt. It felt like Thanksgiving again, with the clock winding down, no timeout being called. It was just embarrassing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, we listen, the Chicago Bears are just this is who they are. They're just probably the worst coached offense we've seen in the NFL in years, like several years.
Yeah.
Because you look at the talent they have, and listen, the O line's bad, Michael. We get that, but there's a lot of team like Joe Burrow had great offensive lines.
Yeah.
Like no, he didn't, and they were way more capable.
The Patriots have an awful offensive line, and their offense has shown to have a more of a pulse than the Bears' offense this year.
Yeah, it's just their schemes are terrible. It's really bad when your rookie quarterback seems to have more game awareness than any of the coaches. That
Yeah.
is highly alarming.
Mhm.
I will say this though, like if you're the Bears, like they're gonna do this big search for their next head coach. Like they're gonna be, this is a bad spot because on one hand, like you're thinking like, okay, most obvious choice, right, is going to be somebody with like high, like really good scheme, innovative.
That's a Ben Johnson. Like, they're your
Like Ben,
goal is
yes,
Ben
Ben
Johnson.
Johnson. Just Ben, but will Ben Johnson want to go to Chicago?
Listen, if you're like a genius scheme coach, and every time this gets thrown, we're all talking about Ben Johnson. So if you're Ben Johnson and you look at the Bears, you're like, okay, they need an offensive line, and their offensive line is awful. But if you get an offensive line, I like all the shiny toys that they have there. I can work with that. I can make this work. Do they Are they broken enough? Are they too broken where I don't feel as though I can trust whatever culture I'm going to instill to fix it? You know what I'm saying? Like, you as a head coach, prospective head coach, I should say, need to look at the Bears and think, I can write all this crap. Like, I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna flush everything that has happened before I got here out, and I'm bringing in a new regime, a new mentality, a new culture, all of it, and I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna make it better, I'm gonna make it work, and, oh, by the way, my schemes are great, and we have a lot of talent, so it should be even better.
I
I
you
yeah.
know, I think I think my like just kind of know moving on to, like Ben Johnson, like them running like the fake stumble play on the Bears
Mhm,
last
mhm.
week.
It's like they're showing off to it's like he's showing off to the Bears. He's like, "Oh, look at what we can do."
I do feel like that like with Ben Johnson, I think the Lions. It's not just all Ben Johnson. I'm not sitting here saying Dan Campbell's this brilliant head coach. Like the GM for the Lions, I think his name's Ernie Holmes,
Mhm.
Brad
Okay.
Holmes
I
is like probably the best like drafter in the NFL,
Sure, yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like so it's really easy to be a coach, I think, if your GM is just literally hitting home runs every draft. Not to belittle, I'm not trying to take away from Ben Johnson. My point's being like, if Ben Johnson goes to the Bears, like he's going to want to probably bring in somebody from the Lions front office, and he's going to probably want to recreate the Lions with the Bears. And are they going to fire Ryan Poles? Like,
Well,
not
I
going to
think I think
Ryan Poles really hasn't done a great job. I mean,
he's been very polarizing, some really nice things, and then some, like
he's been pardon the pun.
yes. You look at what the Bears will have to decide. They'll have to decide, do they want to keep Ryan Poles or do they wanna fire him? If they decide to keep him, you'll Ben Johnson won't take the job unless he, like, I'm sure gets some sort of say on what goes down with it. Like, that's gonna be part of the interview process. I'm sure Ben Johnson's gonna ask, like, "Hey, like, am I getting," not final say or whatever, but it's like, "Am I getting input on who we're picking here to be on the team?" Like, I'm gonna want some guys, like, I'm gonna demand, we need some new offensive line, whatever that may be. If Ryan Poles has, like, a problem with it or is, like, hesitant, I don't think he's gonna take the job. Like, all these analysts keep talking about, like, Ben Johnson is willing to wait for the perfect opportunity, the perfect job opening. If it doesn't come up, he's not afraid to stay in what's a great situation in Detroit for him as the OC. So, like, if he looks at all the teams out there that are gonna have new head coach opportunities, and he's like, "The Bears is the only one with the most set roster
Do
that
you
I wanna
think?
go to."
Sorry, I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and he looks at that and says, "Of all teams out there, the Bears is where I wanna be in terms of players already there, quarterback, whatever." If he has an issue with the GM and front office decisions and he can't, like, feel confident in that entering that situation, the way all these reporters put it, he'll just stay in Detroit and be the offensive coordinator for another year. So, we'll have to see.
Do you think Ben Johnson's just waiting for Dan Campbell to make a stupid decision in the playoffs that might cost him his job, and he'll be the head coach of the Lions?
No, because they're not firing Dan Campbell for ever. Not forever, but for a long time. Like, what he's brought in terms of culture and identity and, like, a sense of pride to be a Detroit Lion and not a sense of shame, which has been kind of what it's been for the entire existence of the franchise. I don't think the Lions are gonna let that go anytime soon. It would take, I think, significant amounts of failure before that would happen. Like, it would have to be they missed the playoffs for, like, 4 straight seasons or something like that, and you could see the culture has worn off, like, the players aren't buying into what he's selling anymore, like, and I don't see that happening, anytime soon, to be fair. Like, the first year without Ben Johnson, there might be some growing pains, but, like, there's still gonna be the tough, we're gonna fight, we're gonna be gritty, we're gonna out physical teams even if we don't have, the genius scheme anymore. We're gonna still do our best, like all that sort of stuff. If when that starts going away, that's when you fire a coach like Dan Campbell, because that is where a lot of his value comes. That it went from being a sorry joke, the Detroit Lions franchise, to now they all have a sense of pride that like they're this tough team, they can battle with anybody, all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
Excuse me.
And then then we have the Seattle Seahawks, who I
I
mean,
don't.
barring a Commanders collapse,
Hmm.
they can
And a Rams collapse.
and a Rams collapse, they still have a path to the playoffs. Yeah,
They
I would
play
say
each other. Rams Seahawks play each other week 18. I'm pretty sure. So the Seahawks need the Rams, or the Cardinals, that is. Sorry, or no, yeah, the Rams to lose this week today, actually, to the Cardinals. So that's a good segue into the picks. We go 3 games today for a slate tomorrow. First game we have up Saturday, 1 p.m. The Los Angeles Chargers are in New England to take on the Patriots. So the Chargers are 5.5 point favorites on the road. They're sitting in the second slot of the AFC West, looking at outside the 5 seed. They still have not officially clinched a playoff spot yet. A win today would clinch themselves a playoff spot, I'm pretty sure. And I'll be honest, I'm looking at the division winners. There's a clear team that you want to play, and it's the Houston Texans. And getting that 5 seed is mightily important for all three wild card teams. You don't want to go play Baltimore, Kansas City, or Buffalo on the road. But if you had to go play Houston, I think you'll take your chances fairly comfortably. So Chargers know what's at stake. Patriots, the tank is really on. At this point, teams are tanking. They're tanking. I'm taking the Chargers -6. I honestly feel like, or 5.5, sorry. I honestly think that line might be a little low. I know the Patriots are a frisky team sometimes, but I don't know. It feels like the Chargers are a lot better. So I'm going to take Los Angeles -5.5.
I'm taking the Chargers as well. New England right now is currently slated to pick second in the NFL draft. I think the Patriots would love nothing more than to get into a position where a team that needs a quarterback is going to call them up in March
Yeah, that's what they want.
and say,
That's what
"Hey,
they
we're going to
want.
offer a bazillion picks for Cam Ward or Shador." If I don't know, I don't really foresee the giant tank to like drop off. I think somehow I
Yeah, but you look at the good old NFL tankathon. The Giants have 2 wins, and then there are one, two, three, four, five teams with 3 wins, and 3 more teams with 4 wins, settling out the top 9 teams in the draft. So there are a lot of shuffling that can go around with a bad team winning a game they shouldn't. And listen, some of these teams play each other as well in that mix. So someone's got to win um, to hurt their tank stock. So you're taking the Chargers as well.
yep.
Okay, that takes us to our second game of the day. Um, Interesting line here. You're seeing how Vegas truly feels about a certain someone, a certain team. The Denver Broncos are on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals are favored at home, 3.5 point favorites at home. Seems like I think the people with the brain are really obviously seeing what's going on with Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix against the Chargers last week had 260 passing yards roughly, and about 230 of them came after the catch.
Man,
You
it's the
tell
West
me what
Coast
that
offense, man. I
means.
don't know why you're ripping him for that.
Yeah, man. And then we watch him throw underthrow wide open receiver, just bad quarterback play the last few weeks for
So
sure.
here's the thing with this game I want to bring up to you, Michael. The Denver Broncos on the road are 4-4, which is mid, obviously.
Mhm.
Michael, the Cincinnati Bengals are 2-5 at home.
Can we say it has something
That's
to
not
do
good.
with the
That's
teams
bad.
they've
That is
played?
very bad.
I guess maybe the Broncos fall under a good team category, but the teams they've lost to at home, um, obviously the Patriots, that was a very bad one. But Patriots, Bengals, Ravens, Eagles, Steelers, those are all playoff teams except for the Patriots
Yeah, but
that
if the
they've lost
Bengals
to
are
at
trying to
home.
be a playoff team, you need to like
You
beat
gotta beat a playoff
one.
team, and
You got to
Bronco listen, you
beat
gotta beat the team
one
you're
of
trying
them.
to catch. You gotta beat the team you're trying to catch, and the team you're trying to catch right now is the Broncos. Listen, the Broncos massive game for the Broncos. They need to win in the worst way. I do think they're gonna collapse. I think they're gonna miss the playoffs. I think well, they're so lucky that Kansas City clinch the 1 seed and have no reason to play their starters next week. But listen, maybe Carson against the Broncos can hold them out, that last week of the year. Broncos are very, very fortunate that the Chiefs have nothing to play for next week. But I do think it's going to come down to that. I'm taking the Bengals minus 3.5. I do think the Broncos defense has still been very effective. However, with the offensive deficiencies, I think the Bengals defense, who, still is not good, is
You
going to
bring
have
up
an
you
easier
talk about
test.
how bad the Broncos offense is and um like how ass they are. So Broncos have scored 363 points this year. To put that into perspective, they've scored more points than any team in the AFC South. They have the same amount of and I'm just going through the AFC. Uh, one, two, three. They have the fifth best scoring offense in terms of points in the AFC.
Yeah, I wonder if you could look at
So I mean,
yards yards per drive.
it's not like they're like the 2023 Carolina Panthers either. I think this is going to be a very close game, and I do think
So the Broncos, John, like you said, like what did you say? The fifth most scoring points team in
in terms of
football, right?
points, 363 points so far,
They're
and that's
22nd in yards in the NFL this year. They're scoring because they don't got far to go. They don't have to go very far. That's what I'm getting at here. They're getting
yeah.
set up with short
What
fields.
what team is just mentally brain dead coaching wise that would potentially allow the Broncos to capitalize on that? It's the
No, I wouldn't call the Bengals the most brain. Maybe. We'll see. I'm taking the
you don't
Bengals.
think
Where are
they're
you at?
brain dead?
I who the Bengals? I don't think they're that brutal. Listen, I think they might finish 9-8.
I'm taking Denver. I don't. This Bengal team is like a Ponzi scheme, man. They're just like
Wow.
they make you like, dude.
Make it bite.
Jamar Chase is having one of the greatest seasons ever by an NFL wide receiver. Joe Burrow is the comeback player of the year, and there is a possibility that they could finish with 10 losses. Who do they play
Yeah,
next
that's
week?
really bad. They play the Steelers.
Yeah, it's because they're coached horribly.
Yeah. Which takes us to the Cardinals Rams game Saturday night. The Rams are 6.5 point favorites at home. The Cardinals are very, very frustrating. They kind of go as Kyler goes, and Kyler's been pretty inconsistent all year. Like, just it's super frustrating. Like they dominate the Jets. Not that they should get like a cookie for that, but it's like dominate. You beat the brakes out of the Jets. That game was a what, a 1.5 point spread. Um, that game, and they won
I
31 to
mean,
six.
I don't think we should be like
My point is that like they look like
the
that, and
banner.
it's like,
We beat the brakes off the Jets.
listen, they didn't skate by, but then you look at how they've handled other games where it's like Then you only put up 6 points against the Seahawks, where their defense has looked extremely weak for, a lot of the season. Then you go toe to toe with the Vikings and you lose by a point in an extremely frustrating manner. It's like Vikings, one of the best teams in the league. Then you play the Seahawks again. You get them at home. You have a chance to right the wrong. And you kind of get bullied and like dominated again. Then you take care of the Patriots
Pew
and you
pew 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 pew
Panthers to
pew
help
pew
save
pew pew
yourself.
pew 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 pew
And
pew
then you
pew pew
lose. And
pew
then you
pew.
lose to the Panthers and on in overtime in a very
Bro, that them
frustrating.
losing to the Panthers to me, that was like the most obvious thing last week.
Yeah, but jeez, man. And then you go play the Rams. Like it's just the way things have been going, I can't. And if James Conner's going to play, which is very big for them, but I don't know. Rams need to win to clinch a division spot here. Obviously, the Cardinals have they been eliminated? Are they out? Right?
They're done.
Yeah, they're done.
Chuba
They're
Hubbard,
rolling over.
Chuba Hubbard, his last play of the season because he's just been put on injured reserve was him
Was ending
scoring,
the Cardinals season.
ending the Cardinal season, and he just
I'm
says,
taking the
"Yo,
Rams.
yo, I'm out. Yeah, I'm taking the Rams too. Obviously, like Rams, great offense. Michael, just like as an aside, who like we talk about like legacies, like the best quarterbacks of like our lifetimes. Like, where do you rank like Matthew Stafford? Because
He's up there. Um, like I'm
he's had
putting
like
him below certain guys. Like you look at his era. The guys that I would say are comfortably above him are Brady, Manning, Rodgers, Breeze. Like, I guess the Mahomes count, yeah, like, I wasn't counting Mahomes in that era, but yes, definitely Mahomes. And then I'm gonna cut that off. Like, I'm not including Lamar or Allen. Like, I'm counting that as the next era. I'm not counting that as his era. So all those quarterbacks I need, Mahomes, I guess I should count Lamar and Allen. Where like Lamar is better than him for sure. Allen is like going to be. But even if I cut off, don't include Mahomes, like start counting before where it's Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, um, Manning, definitely. But after that, like he probably slots in nicely behind there. Like he's better than Flacco, better than Newton, better than Matt Ryan. Better Roethlisberger is like probably close to the same. Russell Wilson, he probably has this slight edge over. You think a peak Russell Wilson was very, very good.
so it's the reason why I
It's
bring
around
this
like
up.
5.
He's like I always felt like he's always been like a borderline elite quarterback,
I
but
think he's just been
he's
he
like
got
the
Lions
least. He has
syndrome.
like
Like,
he has the fewest amount of like accolades I've seen.
well, yeah, he played on a bad team for a lot of
You
years.
know that
That
Joe
like
Flacco's never been to a Pro Bowl,
that surprises me. That
and
definitely surprises me.
like we pull up Matt Ryan,
He's been to Pro Bowls.
4 Pro Bowls,
Yeah.
first team All Pro, MVP. Like
What are you
he's
getting
got
at? Stafford's Hall of Fame case? Because I think
shots.
he deserves to get in.
Stafford is like
I think he gets in, and I would say he deserves it.
well. Here's the thing: is like
We can't
is
punish the guy for being on the Lions,
of course no.
and
I
that's what I think.
but I also think too like Eli is like a people debate should Eli Manning be in the Hall of Fame and like
Eli Manning is the perfect case of debate because his stats as a whole are just not that impressive. But he went on 2 crazy Super Bowl runs, dethroning 2 extremely good teams where it's like, depending on how you measure that, like, that depends. Like, in terms of who's the better quarterback all time, Matthew Stafford is 40 times better than Eli Manning ever was. Truly,
I
like,
agree.
people really forget that Eli Manning was on his way to get benched before or getting traded, cut, something off the Giants, not the Giants starting quarterback, before they had the lightning in a bottle run to beat the Patriots and undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl. And that bought him some goodwill. Then he had playoff choke and some other not great years, but then he goes on another one and wins again. It's like, oh my God. And it brought him enough goodwill to be the quarterback for the Giants for my entire childhood. So,
Mm.
you know, is Eli a Hall of Famer? I don't know. But I think if you put him in, you're really putting a lot of weight on winning Super Bowls, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But in terms of strictly the player, strictly the quarterback, if you're putting in Eli, it definitely opens the door for a lot of other guys. Like Matt Ryan was a better quarterback throughout his career than Eli Manning. Just was. Like Philip Rivers definitely. And those two guys are like two they're about as fringy as they get. You know, guys that never won the Super Bowl, only one appearance between the two of them. But you look at their numbers, and they absolutely have great numbers. It'll be an interesting debate how a lot of these 2010s quarterbacks get treated when it comes time for Hall of Fame consideration. But anyways, on to Sunday. On to Sunday, we have the Indianapolis Colts at the New York Giants. Anthony Richardson is questionable. Is he playing?
I would imagine since the Colts are fighting for their playoff lives, he
Yeah, but like, what's his injury? He's got some. I didn't know he was hurt.
back foot.
Back foot, like a
No,
heel.
his back and his foot.
Oh, oh. um, gee, that is unideal. I have to say. They
Well,
should beat the Giants anyways. I will say, no matter who's playing in there. You know, the Giants. It would behoove the Giants to lose their last two games. If they could do anything right, it would be to ensure that they drop the next two games and finish the season with 2 wins and ensure yourself. You control your own destiny for the number 1 pick. Don't screw it up. Colts fighting for their playoff lives. Jonathan Taylor really awoken after his disaster in Denver. I'm taking the Colts minus 7.5.
I'm taking the Colts
Richardson
as
or not.
well. I do feel though like it's in New York. Like you want Shador, right? Is that the guy? Is that who the fans all want now? Is Shador?
I don't know. Like, I don't know if they're in love with any
I
quarterback.
think this might be the case where the Giants winning would like. Would you ever fire a GM for winning
GM
and coach for winning?
failing the tank.
I mean, they clearly are tanking because of all the guys they throw on injured reserve. It's like anybody that's like nicked up, they're like go on IR
Just end the
because
season. Yeah. Yeah.
right, like they're.
No, it's pretty clear. I don't know.
I
I don't
wonder.
know. We'll have to
I wonder if
see.
the Giants are getting investigated for tanking, Michael.
I wonder if the Giants are going to get slapped with fines for the rest of eternity, and their star player is going to be like cast spells against. Who knows
Malik
though?
Neighbors is gonna be
Malik
fine.
Neighbors is going to get injuries that you've never even heard of. And I'm supposed to believe whatever. Anyways, oh God. So this game blows. The New Orleans Saints are at home against the Raiders. I don't want to see one highlight from this game. No one of note is playing except for like Brock Bowers, and that's it. The Raiders. Antonio Pierce does not care about the tank. He's making it very clear with their win against the Jacksonville Jaguars last week. And the way that things are going for the Saints, the way whoever the hell is playing for them, feels like this is another game the Raiders win and kind of, you know, really just screw themselves. Very feels very Raidery of them. So I'm gonna take the Raiders minus 1.5 on the road.
I'm taking the Raiders as well. Max Crosby like whining like about how bad the Raiders are when he's like I don't know. I'm just kind
The
of annoyed
Raider.
by him.
You've been annoyed by Max Crosby for some time now.
I'm just annoyed at how like I just hate these when guys like you feel bad for guys on bad teams, but I don't
Mhm.
feel bad when they sign massive extensions and then they're like, oh, like you hear the reports, Max Crosby wants out if Antonio Pierce is not retained. And we all knew Antonio Pierce was not a good head coach. This was a bad idea from the start when they retained him as the head coach.
They didn't bring in enough around him to make him like Dan Campbell, you know what I'm saying? Like, they
Yeah,
wanted to
and
they
and
this
like
like, "This is
and
our
now he's
rah-rah
like,
guy."
he's just like complaining because and Michael, how like you see like the Miles Garrett. I need to see the plan from winning, and people are like, "Ugh, Miles Garrett." It's like
Mhm.
no, they brought in the creep. The Browns are a complete joke.
Yeah.
Like they should be better than they are, right?
Yeah, they've handled post Baker very poorly.
Yeah, like the Raiders were never in that position like the Browns were in, where like Miles Garrett is
And
the
what if they
best.
were, it was with Derek Carr, and they, like, just totally cut that off as soon as it started, like, it's very strange.
Yeah, so like my point is like I don't know, dude. Like it's like I don't know. Like I see people were like kind of giving Miles Garrett a hard time, and then Max Crosby's like this victim. It's just really annoying.
Mhm. Alright, so you're going with the Raiders to ruin the
Yeah, like
tank?
dude, the Saints blow. Like the Saints,
Yeah.
the Saint. I mean, yeah, dude. Like Spence, they got shut out. I mean, the only thing I could think of is they got shut out by the Packers. Very intervened because I was up by like 15 points in fantasy. I had love. My opponent had the Packers defense.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh my god, like Spencer Rattler could just, I don't know, fault like butt
Pick
fumble.
6, yeah.
Yeah, and then I would have lost. So
That would've been terrible.
yeah,
Alright,
yeah.
next game, I don't wanna spend too much time. Titans, Jags, a couple of teams tanking in the AFC South. I'm
Give me the
trusting
Titans. Give me the
I'm
Titans.
trusting Doug. I'm taking the Titans +1 on the road. Trusting Doug to get the job done and lose. Alright, next game we have is the Jets Bills. The Bills suddenly have a lot less to play for, than they once did. The only thing they're playing for at this point is keeping the Ravens back. They can't get the 1 seed, but they can lock in a 2 seed with a win, um, this week against the Jets. And listen, they can say how much they don't, whatever. They want Allen to get his MVP, and he just can't have stinkers the last 2 weeks, the way Lamar has been playing as of late. I do think at this point, the voters are waiting to see which quarterback has a stinker the last 2 games, if any. And if not, then I think you're gonna just see a really tight race, really tight voting, but they can't afford the stinker. So I'm gonna take Buffalo -10, at home against the Jets. I know they probably were a little demoralized after the Chiefs' dominance on Christmas, but I think it is just very important for them to win and lock in the 2 seed and go from there. Make the last game of the year not mean anything. So I'm taking Buffalo.
I'm taking the Jets to cover the spread. If there's one team that is just knows how to ruin their chances at tanking, it is in fact the New York Football Jets.
Well,
I do feel like the Bills right now, especially their defense. I mean, they almost lost to the Patriots.
mhm.
Like everyone's like, "Oh my god, look at this awesome Josh Allen play." I'm like, if this was Lamar, everyone would be talking about how like the Ravens almost lost to the
Game 4.
Patriots.
Yeah, yeah,
It's so annoying now.
yeah.
Like at first I was like, okay, like maybe like Josh Allen's like carrying the Bills and like Lamar has better weapons than Josh Allen does. But like it's sort of like Josh Allen's is just making the plays he's always made. It's just that for some reason the media's done a 180 where everyone's like, "LOL, turnover machine." It's
He's
sort of
not
like
yeah, he's not turning the ball over, that's the biggest difference. He's doing the same thing he's done the last, few 3, 4 years or so. He's just not throwing as many picks. He's got, what, 5 this year? He threw 18 last year. Like, he's totally revered in the turnovers, and, you can make arguments on importance of interceptions and how they decide a bad quarterback or not. Like, there are like, when you're a good quarterback, you're going to push things and you're going to throw picks sometimes. And obviously, it gets to a point where 18 is just far too many. But of the 18, I don't know, probably like 6 or 7 of them were like, "You know what? I'll take Allen taking that shot," and they just happen to get intercepted. Where all of a sudden, again, 12 picks isn't great, but it's a lot better than 18, and it's
Diggs
not
was a
the end of the world.
sociopath. He's the reason why he threw all those
Right,
picks.
right. So, yeah,
I'm
I
being
don't know. It's
facetious, by
just
the way. I'm just
I
saying.
know. It's just like the lack of turnovers is why he's finally getting the respect for it. So, that brings us to our next game, Panthers-Bucks. Tampa had the, hands on the wheel, key in the ignition, in the driver's seat,
Dude,
and
Pot Bowl sucks.
Tubble's not great, not at all. He gave Cooper Rush his best game as a pro, and Cooper Rush is one of the worst quarterbacks to start a football game. So Tampa does this really weird thing, which it just makes sense for what they are. They're not that good. Anytime they start feeling like they might actually be really good, you get a bad Baker day, you get a bad defense day. It's like clockwork. So what do I expect now? I do expect them to bounce back. The Panthers, they got their nice win against the Cardinals. I don't, no Chuba Hubbard. I really think they're limited. I'm taking Tampa -8 at home to kind of right themselves. And, that division's now in serious conquest. They need to win out now to win the division, obviously, unless the Falcons potentially lose. So I'm going to take Tampa to take care of their side of the business.
Well, let me ask you this: do you feel like with the Chuba Hubbard news, obviously the line got bigger for Tampa? Like, do you feel like Bryce Young has like shown you enough where you're like, I like Bryce Young, I love the potential, or do you feel like if he like has a couple bad games, you're like, ugh.
No, I'm if I'm a Panther fan, if I'm a Panther front office, Dave Canales, whomever, you got to stick with Bryce Young. It's
Oh
not
no,
like
I'm not
some
saying
talk.
abandon Bryce Young, but my point's like you just brought it up. Like the Cowboys are horrifically banged up, and they beat Tampa, and Tampa just choked. That was just what they did. They just choked against the Cowboys. Um, like the Rashad White fumble was like what like it was like what are you doing kind of deal. It's like they
Like
literally like
the Panthers play the Bucks tomorrow, and then they play the Falcons. Like those are two teams vying for the division, playoff hopes on the line. If the Panthers go out and like don't play well, you just took away Chuba Hubbard for the rest of the year. I'm not really holding it again. Like, I'll say this, I'm not putting a ton of stock into these next 2 games if they're not great. If they are good, it's an added bonus that without the really, really good running back, the Panthers' offense is still feasible and good against playoff contending teams. But if it's not great, I'm like, I have all the excuses in the book for him. Like, gonna it's not gonna make me think twice about Bryce Young, you know, about how I feel about him based on what he's done since he's come back from being benched.
Tampa needed the Panthers defense to collapse in the 30 seconds to tie a game. And then they needed Chuba Hubbard to fumble in overtime in order to beat Carolina. I'm
Yeah.
taking the Panthers. I I'm kind of like, I know I'm a bit of a believer in like when you like barely lose a divisional game, that like the next time you play, it's like I don't know, like you either have their number or you just know. And like Dave Canales used to coach in Tampa, and like, dude, like I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa blows this game and like Todd Bowles gets fired and they promote Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator, the head coach, and they just I don't know hire like Robert Sala to be their defensive coordinator or something like that.
It would be risky for
Like
Tampa.
or like something smart because I don't know. Like
Yeah,
I think like Jason Litch, their GM, is like very underrated as a GM.
yeah,
He's very underrated. Like everyone's like, oh, he signed. He's oh, they signed Tom Brady. Like it, how how hard is that? Which is true.
it
Not
is true.
exactly difficult, but like
Yeah,
they draft pretty well.
yeah.
You know,
Evans, Godwin,
Wirfs,
yeah.
Kalijah Cansey's a good pro.
Mhm.
Yaya Diaby, Antoine Winfield Jr. Like, yeah, I'm gonna yeah, I'm taking Carolina. I think that I would
Alright,
yeah, I think it's gonna be a bit of a shootout. I think you kind of see
okay.
yeah.
Next game we have is the Eagle game, so we'll skip that, and then we'll go Dolphins-Browns, 4 o'clock, 4:05. This game's in Cleveland. What's the weather in Cleveland? Uh, that's pretty much gonna make my pick for me. They're lucky. It's gonna be like what it is here. Like it's gonna be in like the 50s and raining. That's like that happens in Miami. That's not unheard of. You know what I'm saying?
But they also play
Um,
indoors, don't they, Miami?
it's retractable.
Yeah, but you're not gonna like make them play in the rain.
No, but like it's not like cold. Is I guess what I'm getting at.
Well, the big news for the Browns is they reworked Deshaun Watson's contract, where I believe, according to Ian Rappaport, they are now in a position where in March of 2026, so not this offseason, but the following offseason, they can feasibly release Deshaun Watson and not like they could spread out the cap hits more.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
interesting stuff.
so yeah, so you know, the reign of terror. There's a
There
end
is a
date.
light.
There is
There's
an
light.
end date to the reign of terror of Deshaun Watson. Yeah, Michael, give me the Dolphins. If there's one team that I have faith in to win a meaningless game, and like, I'm not saying like I like Mike McDaniel, but Mike
He's got
McDaniel,
things to get better at.
yeah, and you know, you're gonna fire what? You want to fire Mike McDaniel after one bad year? Well, then you should have that. Then you know what? You should have. Then you know, Sean McVay should have been fired then for missing the playoffs after they won the Super Bowl or whatever. Like, I don't know. That's like really unfair. Like there's a lot of positives there. I mean, listen, if this is like we need Tua to like keep building momentum, I suppose, and then I don't know, man. Like the Browns are a joke. They're starting DTR over Winston because they're clearly trying to tank. They clearly have no interest in winning this game. You know,
Yeah, I'll take the Dolphins with you. The weather's not bad enough. Then the game of the week easily, the Packers Vikings, huge implications on the line. I don't the Packers. I guess I don't know. The Packers cannot win the NFC North, even if the
no,
chips fall their way. They cannot.
no. But you would
Because
love
they
if
play
you're
each
the
other.
Packers to be the team that gets to play Michael Penix in his first ever playoff game. And listen, I like Michael Penix's potential. He's got pretty good arm talent. Um, you know, if Kyle Pitts wasn't you know, a bust, then like he would have had one of the best debuts by a rookie quarterback this year, you know. Um, yeah. When do you feel like the What do you feel like when Sam Darnold's carriage is going to turn back into a pumpkin? That's a very old dated reference, but you know the
Eh,
symbol. This is like when is it going to happen? Is it going to be in the playoffs? Is it going to be in the NFC Championship game?
I don't necessarily think it's gonna. like, I don't know if it's even gonna happen. Like, I think when they lose inevitably, because I don't think they're winning the Super Bowl. I don't necessarily think it's gonna be because like, Darnold played horribly. I think they might just get beat. I think he's gonna play fine, maybe makes a mistake here or there, but I don't think it's gonna be some, like, Darnold threw 4 picks in a playoff game and they lost. I think Vikings got something good going on. Um, to me, if I was a Vikings fan, I'd probably wanna keep Darnold on, like, a Baker kinda contract and then see what I have in JJ McCarthy and kinda
Like
go
he's
from
obviously
there.
a prime candidate to be franchise tagged.
Like, yeah, I'd probably, I guess, tag him, see how he handles the tag. Because if his agent goes out there and sees that he's got a market to give him, like, a 3-year deal, he might refuse to play under the tag. There might be
Well, no, you
some
tag
issues
him and
there.
then you trade him.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, it would be, it would cause issues for, a seamless potential offseason. Um,
But back to this game. I mean, Jordan Love, Toyotathon,
the
Toyotathon, Jordan
Packers
Love.
are peaking at the right time. They're playing really, really well. Their offense looks good. Josh Jacobs has been an utter machine. They made some switches at linebacker, which has been better. It's still not great, but it's definitely been better, especially in coverage, which is kind of where they needed it the most. And I think Eric Wilson has been a part of that, which is crazy to think about. This is a tough game. This is for sure a very, very tough game. I think I'm gonna take the Packers on the road plus 1.5, just because I think these 2 teams are too good for it to be a sweep. I think it's just naturally gonna be a split. They've split every year since 2020, and I think that continues here. I'm taking
If the
Green Bay.
Vikings lose this game, does that mean that the Lions win the division? If the Lions beat the Niners?
Is if the Lions if the sorry, can the who can
If
win the
the
division?
Vikings lose tomorrow and the Lions win tomorrow, they play
Yeah,
each other.
division's over. Because well, yes, it would. Division's over. The Vikings need to win out to win the division because the NFC North record. If the Vikings lose, that would be their 3rd loss, right?
The Lions and the Vikings have the same record.
Oh, no, yeah, I went through this. I went through with the tiebreaker. The tiebreaker, it would come down to the, conference record, I think, or
And the
common
Bills have
opponents.
one conference loss.
It might be the conference record, I think, actually. Or sorry, it might be the common opponents, and the common opponents would favor the Lions because they swept the Packers, and the Vikings lost once to the Packers.
Mm.
So, the Vikings do need to win out in order to win the division. So, I'm gonna take Green Bay this time.
I'm taking Green Bay as well. I mean, the Vikings have been on a massive hot streak, obviously, and I also
Mhm.
kind of like what the Eagles were on, where the Vikings are on an 8 game win streak. And I said last week we did the Eagle game. You picked the Eagles. I picked the Commanders. Was like, something's going to happen that's just going to throw off the win streak. Unfortunately for the Eagles, it was Jalen Hurts getting a concussion. Um,
Mhm.
I think for the Vikings, I do feel like their offense is finally like everyone's getting involved. It's we're not hearing the Jay Jetta is being quadruple covered and like he's not doing anything. And
Mhm.
like that everyone's like, Jordan Addison's getting involved more and like all their weapons, it's like everyone's eating, I guess. I just feel like now it's like if they win, like this is the chaos part of the NFL. We'll get this. I think they're going to play for the division next week. The Lions and the Vikings. They will. I think they will play for the division.
So, that would be what, a Minnesota win then, yeah? They'd have to.
No, I think. So what if both the Lions and the Vikings lose? It
I
was still
still think I think the
oh, they'll have the
tiebreaker,
same record if they both lose.
but it's the well, yeah, I guess they would have the same. Yes, yes, yes. So okay, so you think okay, you revealed your Monday night pick ahead of time. So next game we have is Sunday night, Falcons Commanders. The Falcons are 3.5 point underdogs on the road. This is like maybe I'm hate picking here. I'm taking Atlanta. Um,
No, you're not hate picking. You saw how the Commanders acted after beating the Eagles. They acted like they won the Super Bowl. This was their Super Bowl. You know, beating the Kenny Pickett led Eagles was like their highlight of their season.
listen, big win, huge win, keeps the division hopes alive for them, the slim ones that exist. They like it's just a classic letdown spot after that where, you know, you win that sort of game and you have a team coming in, rookie quarterback, all that sort of stuff, and like, honest to God, they have no business losing Sunday night. Like, truly, they should not lose. They definitely should not. They are the better team than the Falcons. They have the quarterback advantage at the moment. They have, you know, the weapons advantage. They got all the things going for them that they need to. However, I feel like the Falcons kinda got through some growing pains with the Giants, even though they dominated them, there was still food left on the table, and I think that that's something that you can grow on, like, the Eagles still scored a lot of points in that game, if you're not one-dimensional, you can run all over the Commanders' defense, it's when the Eagles became one-dimensional that they were able to shut down the run. The Eagles did not adjust well at all. And I think Drake London can have a very similar impact to the way A.J. Brown did, just getting open on Marshawn Lattimore. So, yeah, I'm gonna take Atlanta, um, which keeps the door open potentially to the Commanders missing the playoffs, making them have to treat that
Yeah,
Cowboy game at the end of the year.
this is the
Maybe it's a hate pick, but
no
we'll
no
see.
no. This is the I would say this is the prototypical like letdown spot
Mhm,
where especially if the Eagles beat the Cowboys and win the division,
mhm.
then it like, kind of takes a little bit of the wind out of the sails of the Commanders.
Yeah.
And look, the Commanders were 14-point favorites over the Cowboys last time they played, or some crazy number, and
Yeah.
they lost to the Cowboys in like the craziest ending we've seen in
Mhm.
the NFL this season. I mean, here's
Yeah.
the thing, dude. Like, no Marshawn Lattimore. Like, Lattimore gets cooked by AJ Brown, and then he's like, "Ah, my hamstring."
Mhm.
I mean, you saw. I mean, listen, the Commanders they turned over 5 times against the Eagles, and like, it's not like they played a clean game against the Eagles and then they won. Like, I was watching the Miracle in the Meadowlands Part Two, where Deshaun Jackson ran that punt back against the Giants, and I saw the Eagles reacted after the game. The Eagles did not win a game after that. They lost out. They remember they lost to the Joe Webb Vikings
Mhm.
at home. I do feel like when you have those like miracle wins, which them beating the Eagles and to them was like a miracle, right?
Mhm.
Like you saw how Joe Davis and Greg Olson were talking about it. Like Greg Olson was like throwing himself at the altar of
Well, listen, the
watching the
Commanders,
Commanders.
like,
It
they
was
had this happen to them already. They've had a miracle win, they beat the Bears on a Hail Mary, and they followed it up with barely beating the Giants. So, like, they won, which is all that matters, you just gotta win those sort of games, but they've had their natural letdowns where they play down to their opponent following a miracle win, where if you go ahead and you're playing down to an opponent that's actually capable, not the Giants, that's how you end up with a loss, but we'll see. Monday night, Lions Niners. I'm sure the league thought this would be for the 1 seed when they made this schedule.
oh, I'm sure they did.
The Lions are 3.5-point favorites on the road against San Francisco. The Niners seem like dead in the water. I will say. I know you're going to pick the Niners, and I think there is something to be there that they do.
This
It
just
should.
looks.
They should
This
have some
is
sort of
a.
pride.
This is literally. This feels like bait. This is like I smell a rat. This is.
I don't think the line. We'll see. I'm taking Detroit minus 3.5. Like
Detroit's
the
laying 3.5 points.
on the road, like they're
So if
extremely
they were at
battered
home,
and
this would be a
injured.
5.5 point game, Michael.
It'd probably be like 6.5. Not that home field means a ton, but I think it's different. Detroit, they were only 7-point favorites against the Bears. Like, do you think that's valid? If you schedule those teams right now, like after that Seahawks game, what's that spread going to be? 13.5? Like I don't know. They're just kind of maybe they're putting a little low lines on Detroit a little bit. I think it's kind of been a.
Well, they're basically well. Everyone bets Detroit. Like what? Detroit hasn't been like the most heavily betted on team in the NFL this year.
I'm sure, but I
Like
don't know. Like the Niners, when they're bad, they're bad. It's what was that? You sent me that most bizarre stat I've ever seen. Since 2003, the 49ers either make it to the conference championship game or they miss the playoffs. Unbelievable. Missed the playoffs 15 times. The 7 times they've made the playoffs, they've at least reached the conference championship. That's insane. Like that is really ridiculous that if they make the playoffs next year, I should just assume they're going to the conference championship game. That is really crazy stuff right there. And like, listen, I know the bad CJ Beathard teams, the Chip Kelly teams, the Jim Tom Sula teams, you know, yeah, before they got Garoppolo, how bad some of those Niner teams were. But Jesus, like, you know, they have the Alex Smith team the Colin Kaepernick team that goes to the Super Bowl, the Alex Smith team that lose in the conference championship. These Purdy-led teams. It's remarkable. It's really, really, really interesting. Like I can't fathom that. So, but yeah, I'm taking Detroit.
I'm taking the Niners. Um, Look, I mean, to me, like Detroit, they played the Bills. They lost the Bills. I think we all picked the Bills. We all knew like the Lions' flat spot was like imminent, right?
Mhm.
I will say this: the injuries really have not caught up with them,
Mhm.
and I know the Niners are also really injured. But at some point, do you just feel like the Lions are they just going to have a spot where they just straight up play down to their opponents and they just like Jared Goff, Goffs it up
They've
and
just been
and they're
winning those
punished
sort of
and they
games.
get punished for it.
Yeah, they
Like
haven't been
we
punished
see
for it.
this in the NFL. It's like there's always games where you're like, how the hell did they blow this game?
I will say, it sounds like you're trying to will it to happen more than you think it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, Jawan Jennings has been the go-to guy for Brock Purdy. He's been quiet the last couple weeks. Who's in for the Niners this week?
I'm not sure if Garendo is playing or not. I still think he's questionable. So you're between either Isaac Garendo or Patrick Wilson as your starting running back. Like it just, I hear you. I
I
don't
think it's
think
like
it's
the
unheard of.
Niners have just played so bad. Like you just feel
They
like
got to play well once, right? And I,
right.
I, I
That's what
hear
I'm
you.
thinking. That's kind of why
And
I
it's not a bad thought. It's not, I don't think this is some sort of Lions demolition, but we will see. Which
yeah
takes us to the Eagle game. 7.5-point spread at home against the Cowboys. Kenny Pickett's going to start. Tanner McKee will be the backup. I don't think Nakobe Dean's going to play, which is not
he
fun.
is doubtful. He's not going to
Yeah, with
play.
a foot sprain. Listen, the Eagles win. They win the division. They lock up the 2 seed basically, and can rest their starters against the Giants, and hopefully, honestly, lose and ruin the Giants' tank. This, like, I see everyone saying worried. Oh, feels like the Minshew Saints game. I think the difference is the. I don't think the Cowboys are going to score more than like 7 points. on Sunday. Um,
But I think the
I,
concern is when they mentioned Minshew Saints game, it's that Marshawn Lattimore had a pick six that
no, I listen. I hear you, but I don't think the Eagles' offense is going to be that incompetent. Like we forget, I think that it's not Miles Sanders back there anymore.
man.
You know,
Now it's like we have like Saquon. Now Miles Sanders is like garbage.
right? Like Miles Sanders was great in 2022, but we're kidding ourselves if we think that Gardner Minshew
Yeah,
quarterbacking
but
Miles
don't like the
Sanders is
Cowboys have
better.
like one of the best run defenses in football?
The Cowboys defense has been very, very good for the last handful of weeks,
I
and I
mean,
think
like
it's super capable.
Mark
However,
Mika Parsons is trying to beat the he wants to play for the Eagles allegations by overcompensating about how bad he wants to beat the Eagles.
no, I understand. I think that the defense played poorly to their standard last week. It was the most points they'd given up since the Phillies were playing baseball, regular season baseball, that is. Um, they committed 5 turnovers, yet could not, like, get off the field when it mattered, you
Well, it
know?
also didn't exactly help the Eagles defense that the average starting field position for the Panthers was at their own 40-yard line.
Yes, there was a lot of awfulness that went down, whether Braden Mann's kicks were way too short, kick coverage sucked too. The defense, like, the Eagles have been put in a position where they're winning and the game is on the line 4 times this season. They have lost to the Atlanta Falcons, they have beaten the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they have beaten the Carolina Panthers, and they have lost the Washington Commanders. You look at that Jags game, they got down there with ease, and they were very, very close to winning the game. Nakobe Dean makes a game-sealing interception on a poorly decisioned, poorly thrown ball by Trevor Lawrence. The Panthers probably should have won the game if not for Xavier Legette simply dropping a touchdown, and then the Eagles get off the field and win the game. Commanders beat them, Falcons beat them. It is clear that that is like a high stress weak point of the Eagles defense. And I think it's a mixture of everything. I think it's a mixture of play calling. Fangio tends to go like blitz heavy at the end of these games, which I can understand, but then he combats it with soft coverage on the outside, and you're kind of giving the answers away on the test and allowing them to churn their way down the field. And, obviously not having CJ really hurt, McCollum was getting cooked for touchdowns. It just as nice as it was to get the 5 turnovers, you got virtually no pressure all game. You got 1 sack. You couldn't make you had a bad tackling day, especially on Jaden Daniels, which, kept them in games. He's scrambling on 4th downs and stuff. Like, they had opportunities to put their foot in the Commanders' throat and end the game, and the defense just let up every time. And I know that if Jalen Hurts plays, they simply don't lose. They probably put up 60 points. Like that sort of offensive dominance was going on before he got hurt. But the defense had a lot of opportunities to step up and they didn't. And I think that they understand that they played poorly last week. They look at what's in front of them and it's like a wounded gazelle in front of a pack of lions with the Cowboys offense, and they're going to attack. They are going to pounce, and I think they are really going to play a very, very good game defensively and give the Cowboys hell and everything to move the football. If you remember that pick six that Gardner Minshew gifted, the Eagles were back on what? Their own like 2-yard line. It was like an 8-yard pick six on a telegraphed like curl route. I don't know if the Eagles are gonna have starting position that poorly all game because of how well the defense is going to play. And again, you have Saquon Barkley back there, not Miles Sanders, where
Well, you
if
mentioned sorry, yeah.
yeah,
So a
I'm
couple
taking the
things that
Eagles.
a couple things that I thought the Eagles did poorly adjusted on. Like, listen, Grant Calcaterra in relief of Dallas Goddard, has been hit or miss.
Mhm.
Definitely missed a lot. against the Commanders. Like obviously Dan Quinn recognized that he's a horrible blocker. So what does he do? He attacks wherever he's at, and look, obviously Goddard's injuries this year have been very frustrating. Right, it's been a
Hmm.
frustrating year. Dallas Goddard's a
Yeah.
lot more important than I think we realize in
Yeah.
multiple areas of the
Uh,
Eagles.
He's so much more important blocking than I think this team could fathom. And he's not like a great blocker. He's a good blocker, but he's not some unit blocking by any stretch.
And because like at some point I was watching the game, I'm like, why don't you bring in Fred Johnson as like the backup tight end like you did in 2022 with Dillard? Like we everyone knows you're going to run. Just knock the Commanders off the line of scrimmage. Like you're more than capable of doing that.
Yeah, the coaching, a big reason why they lost too, you talk about all the things. They got outcoached. They got brutally outcoached. Their offensive play calling when Hurts went down was very, especially the run game. It was just bad. The Commanders, their response to no Hurts was, "We are gonna blitz the hell out of you. We are going to fill every run lane possible, and we are going to make it we are not going to lose because of Saquon Barkley. If we're gonna get beat, it's because Kenny Pickett hits a couple big throws when it matters most." And granted, he did. Devonta Smith dropped the ball. He won't drop a ball the rest of the year. I don't like shit just happens. I don't know what to say about it. It sucked. It's not gonna happen again. But regardless, Saquon went from looking like he might break the record for the single season rushing in Washington that day to like his yards before contact was negative the rest of the game. Like he was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage every single
Yeah, it
time.
was Giant Saquon. He's kind of a throwback to when he was
Yeah,
on the
he was
Giants.
like, I'm all too familiar with this crap. This is awful. And it's because the Eagles lack the creativity. They ran a lot of 12 and 13 personnel with tight ends that can't block. Instead of, like you said, maybe bringing in an extra offensive lineman, whether it's Steen, whether it's Fred Johnson, whoever it may be, bringing in an extra guy.
Well, I don't know the fullback you just picked up,
The fullback, he got like 2, 3 snaps.
Ozzie Blasingame.
They stopped running. They didn't run any like under center really either. I think that could have helped. They ran virtually no play action. They were like, of all the teams in
Geez,
football, they
geez,
ran the
geez, Michael. It's not like when Kenny Pickett was on the Steelers, they just didn't hand the ball off 40 times a game.
right. It's just like you could have done things that weren't that complex to make the running game better. You could have ran more play action, at least keep the linebackers honest a little bit, and if not, you'll just have more opportunity to hit some bigger plays like Kenny Pickett was trying to do. He was trying to take big plays, and you move down the field on some pass interferences. There was a lot of opportunity to succeed. You could have called a zone read with Kenny Pickett. He's not some statue back there. He can very well run pretty decently, like, but they weren't even remotely afraid of his legs. They weren't keeping it they weren't keeping any sort of contain with him. If he was handing it off in his zone read look, they were just all bailing on Saquon, and they knew he was handing it off every time. It was just I don't know. They they could have done more coaching wise to, I think, combat what the Commanders' initial adjustments were when Hurts went down, and they just did not at all.
Yeah,
They just kept running the same crap with Kenny Pickett, just so obviously telegraphed runs that at a shotgun where it's like, okay, he's probably going this way. There was no you stopped kind of running pistol. Like it was just it was not good.
yeah. I mean, that's what happens though when your backup quarterback comes in, and like when you have a franchise quarterback, and then his backup comes in.
Yeah.
Basically, the whole game plan for the week is basically out the window, and
Yeah, you went way too simple. You didn't, I feel like at halftime could have made some adjustments and
oh, I
they did not.
agree, and that's what the Eagles do. I think it's really a shame whenever Jalen Hurts gets hurt is when he actually gets appreciated.
Yeah, no, he'll never get appreciated while he's playing by fans, national media, whoever. He only gets it like, man, we really could use Jalen Hurts when he's not playing. But when he is playing, it's let's pick out everything he
I
does
mean, I
wrong.
really don't want like this season us to like get to win the division or get the 2 seed because we got to like bring Hurts back to play
To play the
a
Giants. Yeah.
tanking Giants team. If you recall, in Week 18, the Giants rested all their starters because they already locked their playoff position, and the Eagles kind of like scraped by them against the Davis Webb or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. That
like
was
the
bad.
Giants.
So are you taking the Eagles this week for Dallas? I know. Go ahead. I know what you're doing. Go ahead.
I'm taking the Eagles.
Ah, that's nice.
I'm taking the
Pleasant
Eagles.
surprise.
So let's just look at the We didn't even talk about the Dallas Cowboys at all. So CD Lamb earlier this week was like, yeah, like, even though we missed the playoffs, like, I'm still going to play. I have a lot of pride.
No, he's out for the year.
And yeah, then the next day, the Cowboys.
They're like
I don't
they're
even,
not.
they're not even tanking, bro, because Jerry Jones is a old curmudgeon, even though, like,
I
when
will
he.
say this. I will say I think they're trying to tank by putting a bunch of these players on IR. However, they still have talented players on the roster, absolutely. And what the biggest takeaway, it's the players like Mike McCarthy. The players know that Mike McCarthy's job was on the line this year. And even without Dak, they knew if they were like, all right, if we finish like with 3 wins or something, 4-win team, and we just lose so many games the rest of the year and get embarrassed, they're gonna almost feel no choice but to fire him. And they clearly like him enough that they've played their asses off and have actually won a couple games to, you know, drag themselves out of a great draft pick possibility, but in their eyes,
Well,
keep the
well,
coach they like.
I think the Cowboys are gonna make the most Cowboys decision on draft night and draft Ashton Genty with their first round pick because that's like the most Jerry Jones ish
Yeah.
move,
Uh,
and that's who they,
I don't want to leave Dallas. They need a running back. They
yeah, they
need
need a running back. So, we're just going to draft Ashton Genty because I think the earliest running back picked in this draft was the third round, right? Blake Corum was the first running. No, it was Jonathan Brooks. Sorry, was the first
yeah,
running back taken, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, and I think with the Cowboys too, like they've been playing really well, close games. I do think they're very much due
Like
for a flat spot, and I would not be surprised. I have this feeling the Commanders are going to miss the playoffs.
John, I really thought they were, but then the Eagles lost.
No, but the fact that they're just like, oh my god, like they think they're like a Atlanta Falcons win would like really like devastate the Commanders because if the Cowboys like let's say the Cowboys lose like by like 20 to the Eagles tomorrow and then they're going to play the Cowboys again and it's like oh we got to win, oh we can knock the Commanders out of the playoffs.
Mhm.
It's like, come join us on the couch.
Yeah, no, the Cowboys will get themselves up for that game, and they're going to be up for this game too. But I do think the Eagles' defense is too good, and they have enough other options on offense to not do what Minshew did against the Saints. So that's where I'm at. Anyways, that's our
That's it,
show,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you for tuning in.
Enjoy some football this
We got a
weekend
lot of
and
football on today. Enjoy your
later
day.
this week too, New Year's Eve, college football. So yeah, enjoy.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.